Okay, so welcome along again to our Lunch and Learn. This is the latest in a long line of Lunch and Learns. I'm not going to go through all of these that we have here, but we have using hand-drawn graphics has been a past one, thanks to Ema. Building online courses was a previous one, thanks to Phil. So we do try and designing virtual training. Jennifer Lindsay Feenan is an expert in that. So we do all sorts of different topics. And thank you, each and every one of you, for contributing and, of course, for coming along. Today, we are looking at designing for diversity, difference, and variety. Just let Gail in. So we've got a very quick introduction to me and Anna. I'll keep my introduction really brief because most of you know me. And then I'm going to hand over to Anna, and she's going to introduce us to our brain, talk through 3 spectrums and 7 attributes. I think, just give me a nod, Anna, if this is sounding vaguely familiar. Yeah, cool. We'll look at what that means for planning our training for the diversity of thinking before we have any questions, next steps, and we wrap up at 2:30 today. Because it's a relatively short session, we don't build in a formal break, but obviously if you need to answer a call of nature, refill your mug with something warm, let dogs out, postman in, whatever it needs to be, feel free to just go along and do that. And obviously if you are eating your lunch, it's okay to turn your camera off. Just to let you know, whilst Anna is speaking, it's nice to just keep yourselves muted, but if you do have a burning desire to ask something, it's fine, just jump on in. There will be opportunities for us to discuss anyway. And if you can keep your camera on, that is brilliant, because we know that you're there. Obviously, if you've got bandwidth issues or you're eating or something like that, then that's also fine to switch it off. So, quick introduction to me. I am the community manager here at the Training Designers Club. For those of you who don't know me, and officially, the Training Designers Club is almost 4 years old, but it's only been running properly, I would say, for the last 3 years. And it's a community where mostly lone L&D professionals come together just to help each other out, to share ideas, brainstorm, just basically be together and make life quicker, easier, and less stressful. And today I'm joined by the lovely Anna Marsden, who I have not known well, been aware of Anna for certainly 4 years. And our paths sort of did this. We sort of had glancing blows with one another. Anyway, spent a lot of time with her towards the end of last year. Thought she was absolutely brilliant. And I think you'll love her too. And talking about something which is important to us all, and something that we know is important in training design, which is making our training just really bringing it to life, making it engaging, building in that variety. But I know after all my years, sometimes I end up doing things out of habit. Sometimes I may get a little bit lazy. Sometimes I don't always think about the best solution, just one that I know that will work. So even if you're an experienced training designer, even if you think, actually, do you know what, my training is pretty varied, I think this will be a really useful refresher. And if you've never really thought about how to build in variety into your training, why not start doing it right from the offset? So Anna, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hand over to you.
Excellent, thank you so much. So just to reiterate, thanks Sheridan, just to reiterate, I have got an idea of what we're going to talk about today. I've got some exercises for you, and I'm going to push us all into that first one really quickly and immediately. But before I do, this is an invite to all of you. Hello Gail, you snuck in there. I've only just seen you down there. You all right? This is an invitation to all of you to unmute and ask the question that you're sitting on. Don't sit on it. Really, please do interrupt me. We're a really nice, small select group today. So if you've got a question, you don't need to bother putting your hand up, whatever, just literally unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'm absolutely happy and fine with that. You might begin to understand why I'm happy with interruptions the more I speak about the tool that I use to help me make sure that I'm planning and delivering sessions that don't just speak to my default behaviours, my default ways of thinking. But we could play a game later, if you like, about guessing our kind of natural defaults of behaviors. My first watch out for you is interrupt me. I love it. I love being interrupted. It's not a problem. So I'm happy for you to interrupt and ask any questions, or just give insights or give good examples. We're all experts in our field, and you're learning experts. So hopefully you will come up with some brilliant ideas in some of the breakout sessions that we've got. I've got a couple of Jamboards that I'm going to use with you. So hopefully that excites and doesn't make you slightly worried about the technology.
We love a Jamboard, Anna. We love a Jamboard in the Training Designers Club.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. So we are going to be looking at basically designing up sessions that speak to a variety of different default ways of thinking and default ways of behaving. And I'm sure some of you in the room are familiar with certain psychometric tools. The tool that I use is Emogenetics. It's a relatively new 1990s new tool, and it measures separately thinking as well as behavior. And that's why it's one of my favorites, because we see the thinking only through the actions, only through the behaviors really, but those two things are measured separately. So we'll be looking at what that tool is in order for me to show you how I use that when I'm designing up sessions, because what we can do really easily as trainers is we design a session that we think will be really fun. And then we don't necessarily think, oh, I love talking, I love role play, I love all this stuff. What if someone hates that? What is the element of design there? What's the element of the training that will pull out that learning for them in a way that won't bring them out in a cold sweat? So that's what we're aiming for today. So as promised, I'm going to ask you to get a pen and a paper, and
Ema's already delighted.
This isn't marked, but if you want to give yourselves marks, I'm more than happy for that to be part of the session. So I would like you to get a pen and paper, and on this pen of paper, or on this even piece of paper, I would like you to write down the following, the things that I say. I'm going to go quite fast, and I would like you to keep up with me. So you need to write down what I say, and I'll tell you specifically. You need to keep up with me. I'll be going fast. I'm assuming you're all ready. Okie dokie. So on your piece of paper, I want you to start with the numbers. 2, 7, 8, 1, 3, 23, 11, 19, 50. Name a colour, the first colour that comes into your mind. Write that colour down. 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 45, 32, 32, 31. And I want you to name a piece of furniture, the first piece of furniture that comes into your mind. Write the piece of furniture down. 7, 21, 89, 65, 4, 2, 8, 50. Draw a flying horse. You're absolutely allowed to unmute yourself, because I do like to hear a giggle. And I saw a few of you do that.
There's only one of us can draw a flying horse.
It looks like a fried egg.
Okay, stop drawing your flying horse. Stop drawing your flying horse. You're not allowed to draw any more elements of the flying horse. Oh, Gail, that's a very good one. So, are we showing work? Oh, I can't see that, Paula.
My flying horse looks like a dragon.
Mine looks like a dragon as well, but it's tiny.
Yeah, right. I'm really interested to see.
I wrote draw a flying horse because you said to write down what you said.
Oh, Fiona.
I did.
So yeah.
Did Wendy do the same thing?
Wrote it down, didn't draw it.
Wrote down.
Wrote it down.
I failed at the first hurdle.
What did you fail at, Gail?
Not following instructions.
Wow. We're not making any judgments.
The worst judgment is my own.
It always is. It always is. So, could I ask you, for those of you who have your cameras on, would you leave your camera on if the colour you wrote down was red? So turn your camera off if it wasn't red. So keep your camera on if the colour you wrote down was red. Okay. This is my spidey senses said red was a colour. And so a good amount of
Because
you
it's
wrote
quick
down
to
red.
write.
Well, we can figure out why I think it was red. So keep your camera on, the red's there. If you wrote down blue, put your camera on. See more spidey senses, red and blue. So for those of you in the chat that didn't write down red or blue, can you let us know the colour that you wrote down? This exercise is called Mind Reader. And I'm not sure how many, I think we had a good proportion of those that I read your mind. So the red and the blue. Anyone else, write down in the chat if you had a different colour that came to you and you wrote it down. I can't have got it all right with the reds and the blues. I mean, I could have.
Originally, I was going to write iridescent pink, but then realised I was crap at spelling.
That in a short amount of time, Phil, iridescent is it's do you have a growth mindset? That's really good. Iridescent pink. Okay, so blue and red. For furniture, keep your cameras on or pop your cameras on if your piece of furniture that you wrote down was a chair. Yes, yeah, okay. So how many people put down either chair or table? Pop your cameras on if table was the piece of furniture that you wrote down. Okay. Oh, a few more. Not so good on the furniture today. Right. Either bed or sofa. That's what I'm getting. No? It's funny when you do this exercise at home.
Someone will put chaise lounge or something.
Chaise like, yeah, that was Phil's first one, but then again. And now I want to show you what mostly happens in our sessions. So mostly we have red as a colour that comes up. Mostly we have chair as a piece of furniture that comes up. And mostly with the time that I allotted, I mean, this is a very good one. We have an outline of a horse and then we just stick wings on it. And I know, Gail, that you drew something that looked very similar to that because it was an outline and wings. Can we see? Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else get a very similar horse with wings? I mean, you don't have to show us, but it is funny.
I'm not going to show you because Ema would be shocked.
Come on, Ema, you've got to show
like that. Well, it's so little, but mine looks
this looks like a
eagle.
perfect example of the one I have on the slides. Anyone else want to share their horse picture? And you don't have to.
Mine looks like a tiny little lizard.
It is
Anna, are you assuming we all drew one? Because I, at that point, then just wrote the words.
Oh, did you? Ah,
I had
okay.
read earlier, and then I thought, no, I don't think that's what she meant when she said, write everything I say.
Right.
I just wrote, draw a flying horse.
Flying horse, okay.
I haven't
Yeah,
had
somewhat inspired by Picasso, I feel, if I can just get it in front of the camera. I've
Oh,
no idea.
excellent.
I love
Maybe
that.
cubist, maybe, yeah?
Yeah.
Very good.
The post
You and me
art
both.
is coming out. I love that.
I did the exact same as Fiona. Wrote it down,
Did you?
wrote red, and then wrote furniture, horse.
Yeah. What's that in the chat? Yeah, excellent. Okay. So why do you think I got us? We're going to talk about the brain. Why do you think I got us to do that little fun exercise at the beginning? Any idea?
See how much information we could follow.
I think you did it because people are so predictable under pressure.
Hold on to that idea, Gail. I think so. Yeah, the under pressure part is a main takeaway of this exercise, which I'm not going to tell you until The second exercise is complete. And the second exercise is with same pen, different paper if you like, or on the reverse of that paper. I'm going to get you to write a sentence on repeat. So I'm sure none of us were naughty at school and didn't ever have lines. None of us had lines to do, but I'm going to get you to write lines. So those of us that have no idea what it was like to be given lines at school, that is, you write the same sentence on repeat until I tell you to stop. I'm going to give you about a minute to do this. And the sentence that I want you to write has a couple of caveats. You are not allowed to dot any I's or cross any T's. Okay? I want you to write at your regular speed. I'm going to give you a minute to do this. And the sentence I want you to write down is 10 times I've told you to stop doing that. 10 times I've told you to stop doing that. Go. No crossing of T's, no dotting of I's. Keep on going until I tell you to stop. 10 times I've told you to stop doing that. You've got 15 seconds left. Continue on. You've got 15 seconds left. Okay, stop. Put your pens down. I should have said to you to put your mutes off because I really enjoyed hearing and seeing the faces being pulled when you were really trying hard not to cross the I's and dot the cross the T's and dot the I's.
My fiance just asked me what's wrong because I squawked.
I like the squawk. Adela, what did you say?
I thought it would have been a few expletives.
Sometimes there is. Sometimes there is. Why is that? How did that feel for us all?
I lost the ability to spell. I've completely the wrong version of told. It's like a toll road.
Really, that's really hard. Really
Yeah.
hard.
Really hard?
Yeah.
What other words would describe it?
It's, you've got to really concentrate, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to
Okay,
use
so let me
symbol.
share my thought process. I was like, this is silly. I can give you I's without dots, but not T's without the dash. So I'm going to meet you halfway there.
I found the same.
That's what I did.
I found the I's was easy because I always go back and do them later anyway, but the T's I do them at the time. So
yeah.
You know what I
trying to
noticed that
use
was
symbols
interesting?
instead of writing.
Sorry, Sybil, you go.
So I was trying to do symbols instead of writing. So I write the number 10, put a X sign next to it for times. I have, and you know, you for you, and trying to use symbols instead of continuing using, to avoid using the I and the T.
So you were coming up with a code of being able to do it. Some might say a way of cheating, but coming up with a way of doing it so that you didn't have to cross the T's and dot the I's. So couldn't make sense of it. Too many slops rather than stops. Gail, what were you going to say?
Yes, sorry to I interrupted you there, Sybil. I found it interesting that I actually only realised that I'd made a mistake when I heard somebody else squawk, and I stopped what I was doing and quickly checked, and I went, "Oh, I made a mistake as well." But it was at the end of the sentence.
It was at the end.
Both
So
times.
when I said to you, you've got 15 seconds left, did that impact your ability to do it well or not?
I just wanted to get to the end of the sentence.
Yeah,
I wanted a nice, neat finish.
That was the only time I actually wrote it almost correct.
I was
made
more
two
careful.
mistakes in that time. I was near the end of the penultimate sentence and I wrote one more, but made two mistakes. But the sentence before that I'd made none. So the time pressure made me I made mistakes within the time pressure, didn't make me. But
yeah. So again, coming back to this idea of the time pressure, it helped us not do it in accordance to the rules because we were trying to get it finished. So we weren't necessarily thinking and using that hard. Who said it was hard? What were some of the other words? So we said hard. Someone said frustrated. What other words were there to describe it?
Really challenging, because you realize how you do things so automatically, and it's so challenging to try and change habitual behavior. And my writing looked like a different language by the time I got to the last sentence.
Absolutely. We've got counterintuitive on the chat there. Yeah. So this idea of, I've only said, just don't dot your I's and cross your T's, but that is so alien to us because how many of us learned how to write when we were very young? And we're probably not very young anymore. So we've spent a lot of time crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And so we've laid down these neural pathways, these behaviors, and we practice them and reinforce them. And so as soon as we are asked to change, it's really hard. And not only is it hard, it's frustrating, it's annoying, and it's challenging. And someone said before about having to put a bit more effort in. And so a bit more energy you've got to use because you're working outside of a preference. So I wanted to start the session with those two activities because I think they're really great examples of how unknowingly we work in our very nice, flat, well-trodden neural pathways. And we don't necessarily know that until we step outside of them, until we step outside of what is are natural and normal. I try not to use the word normal, but that's my only other one that I could think of right in that moment. But when we're stepping outside of what is regular and what we do normally, it can be really, it can bring up a lot of emotion. It can bring up a lot of frustration. So what we call that, have I still got my slide now? What we call that in epigenetics is feeling scratchy. So when you're outside of a well-trodden behavior, well-trodden thought process, something that you do regularly, when you step outside of that, it can be scratchy, it can feel uncomfortable and frustrating, and it can sap your energy. But it doesn't mean we can't learn new ways of doing something. It just takes, I'm not sharing my slides yet, but I will go back to my horses. It doesn't mean we can't learn new stuff. We can. And sometimes as trainers and learning designers, we forget that emotional impact of when we're asking someone to do something for the first time, when we're asking them to learn something new. We're asking them to step outside of their comfort zone. And we're asking them to feel frustrated, annoyed, for it to be hard, for it to be a challenge. So one of the kind of takeaways of this exercise is we can, and this is where I'm going to share my horses, we can learn to act outside of our preferences. This is what I thought you'd all do in the time pressure, right? I was probably a little bit right with the colours and the furniture, a bit more spot on with the horses. But if we're given more time and permitted to feel scratchy, these are the types of horses that we start to see. So my personal favourite here, if you can see that right at the bottom, is a horse eating a magic mushroom. So this is a flying horse. How creative is that? I also like the first class horse being flown in the airplane. That's cool. The cannon, the paraglider, the helicopter. These are all flying horses. But in that 30 seconds that I gave you to draw a flying horse, our neural pathway that is laid down what we understand a flying horse would look like in the 30 seconds I gave you is outline horse, wings, put wings on it. And that's the fastest way we can get to that information in our head. It doesn't make it wrong, but if we give ourselves a bit more time and a bit more space to feel that scratchy and challenging and uncomfortable, we can work outside of what our norm and regular preferences are. Any questions before I move on from our horses? No? Sheridan, I am casting an eye over the chat, but if there's anything that I miss, would you?
I will do. I will do. It's really interesting the point you just made there about when we're under time pressure, and it's something that I say a lot about training design generally. When we're designing under pressure, it's very hard to do your best work because you just have to get something out there.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all experienced and we know what we're doing, and it will be okay. But you can't do your very best work when you're under enormous pressure.
Absolutely. And I think as trainers, so we will all have, and I'm going to very briefly give you an overview of the tool I use, because I know there's other people that use other psychometric tools, but I use this in a format to help me work outside of my preferences when I'm designing, because especially if we're time pressured to design up a workshop, we'll go to our preferences of what we like to do, of how we think, how we behave. But that might not necessarily resonate for the whole of the group or all the participants. So that won't be, as you rightly said, it won't be the best work, the best design session, if we haven't thought about the differences in the classroom, the differences in the group.
Anna,
so we're going to lean in.
Anna, there is a really interesting comment that Jasmine's noticed.
Oh yeah.
All your horses are facing in the same direction. I wonder
why
that is. There's probably some deep and meaningful thought to that.
Do you know what, Jasmine, you are the first person ever to have said that, and I've never noticed that, ever. So yeah, maybe there's a deeper meaning.
Maybe they're all done by right-handed people.
Maybe, yeah. I know that some folks who are accredited in Myers-Briggs, they do a similar thing with right hand and left hand. So when you're writing with your, or should I say your dominant hand. So if you're writing with your dominant hand, then you're really good at it, right? But if someone says write with your other hand, it's really hard. But it's really hard and scratchy and uncomfortable, and all the things that we said about feeling scratchy, this frustrating, challenging, awkward. Sometimes people say it's weird and it's strange. And this scratchy of feeling scratchy, if you for the first, I don't know, minute, write with your non-dominant hand, then if you do maybe a minute every single day, after a week, you'll be able to write much better. And we know that. But it's easy to lean into our preferences. It's easy and faster immediately to write with your dominant hand. So we'll be looking at this idea of feeling scratchy and how we can kind of challenge ourselves as learning designers to move out of our preferences into that scratchy space so that we're providing a better experience for the people that come to our courses. So I talked a little bit about neural pathways and, you know, the well-trodden pathways in our brain. And this brings me on to, this is emergenetics. This is the tool that I use. And as Sheridan outlined earlier in the introduction, it's made up of 7 attributes. The first attributes that we're going to look at are the behavioral attributes. And the model itself, epigenetics, is, as you can see, the pie chart and the purple arrows on the outside. The purple arrows on the outside tell us that there are their behaviours. We see behaviours first, but how we behave and how we think is different. So we might not necessarily see that someone is a really analytical, data-driven thinker if they are expressive to an extreme. We might not necessarily know that how they like to and interpret the world is based on data and analytics. So those two things are separate. So epigenetics in itself has 7 attributes, 3 are behavior and 4 are thinking. We all have the thinking. We'll come to that in a minute, but we're going to jump into the behaviors first. And I'm going to get us to do a little exercise on the Jamboards to work out how can we lean into this knowledge and help create better activities within a session, knowing that we might have a difference of expressiveness, a difference of assertiveness, and a difference in flexibility in the room. So I'm going to jump into the behavioural spectrum. Please, if you've got any questions, please do interrupt me. Anyone heard, just before I move on, anyone heard of emergenetics before? No. So it was a tool that was created in the 90s by two American professors, one an educationalist and one a social neuroscientist. And their belief was that they could measure behavior and thinking separately, and that has an implication and a benefit in the workplace. So there's been millions of profiles done, and I'm part of the epigenetics team, and I go and deliver training, and I love it because we just basically talk about ourselves and what we like doing, what our defaults are, and they're really fun workshops. So I'm an accredited epigenetics professional, and you can really see the value of that. Behavior is separate than thinking. We all have the ability to think in these different spheres and behave on these spectrums. So I'm going to jump into that for the next couple of minutes or so.
And that's when I originally spoke to you, Anna. That's why I liked this, because I have a certain level of healthy skepticism around behavior profiling tools.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the reason that when we were chatting before, is that these principles that Anna's talking about, yes, they are used to underpin this particular tool that you can use, but you don't need to use the tool. You can take the principles and still do great stuff.
And that's what I'm basically showing you today, is that I've stolen this idea and I've come up with worksheets to help me plan a session. So I'm thinking about, okay, if I have a room full of people who think like this, what am I giving them in the content of the training that will satisfy them, that will satiate them? If I'm asking them within the activities in the workshop element of the day, I'm asking them to get up and role play, but I know that I have a group of people who will come out in a cold sweat because of that. What other ways can I get them to learn something? So as Sheridan said, this is a really good kind of structure to steal from. And I totally agree, there's lots and lots of psychometric tools on the market, and the irony is that sometimes if you use a tool, it will solidify that type. I'm this type of person. However, what we know about brain science is we can be anything. We might have a default, that's the dominant hand, that's the quickest neural pathway that we've learned and laid down, but it doesn't mean we can't act outside of our preference. The difference is when we act outside of our preference, it takes more energy. And so I think a lot of being a trainer is about understanding the energy in the room and being able to kind of hook someone into a learning objective, and using their energy to do that can be really impactful. So the way that epigenetics understands behaviors is on a spectrum. I love it because it's not hierarchical. No one profile is better than another. The spectrum is horizontal on purpose. There's no low, there's no high, there's no good, there's no bad. We are what our defaults are, and we're able to flex and move, but that will take energy, because that's when we start to get into that scratchiness. But we can all do that. We all have the gift of being able to do that. But without thinking, we're under time pressure, our go-to ways of behaving will be measured on this spectrum. And the way that epigenetics talks about it in terms of energy for each of the behaviors is divvied up into thirds. Again, third isn't better than first third, and second third isn't not as good as third. There's no hierarchical structure of this. It's about the amount of energy we have for each of the behaviors. So first third, second third, third third, and that's divvied up. Imagine a line of 100 people, it's percentiles. So the profiles are measured against the population of everyone that has had these profiles, and they're renormed every 2 years. So statistically, it's updated and maintained so that the measurement of our behaviors means something to the other people who've had the profiles done. So first third, 0 to 33. Second third, 34 to 65. Third third, 66 to 100. And that's about the amount of energy you have for each behavior. Exactly as you said, Sheridan, about having a healthy kind of healthy cynicism and criticism of tools like this. It doesn't help when they have their own language either, does it? It's like you're being co-opted into how people talk about it. So and again, as trainers, more tools are better than none. So I use this because I think it speaks to me, but there'll be other tools that you can lean in to help you access. If there's differences in the room, how do I plan for that? So the first behavior is expressiveness. And every one of us is expressive. Every one of us. So first third, folks who have the first third energy for expressiveness will come to a meeting or come to a training with their ears open. They're listening. They're listening to you. Their listening might look like this. I'm engaged, I'm listening. I'm thinking now about the question that I want to ask, and I'm thinking because I want to make sure I ask the right question. This face might not necessarily look like the stereotypical expressiveness, because third, I'm really listening. I'm loving being here. I'm smiling at everyone. I'm asking a question as well, because what you've just said has made me think about an example and I want to share it with everyone. Do you want to volunteer? I'll absolutely volunteer, because I love to be telling everyone my emotions and how I feel about the day. I'm having a great day. I love being in training because it's really fun. And I love being able to show and display my emotions because I'm having a great time. Oh, loads of things to think about. Third is also expressive, but in a different way. So third folks tend to have, I don't know, 25,000 words a day, and they'll spend them. They love to use their words and their facial expressions and their gestures, and they're re-energized by talking and talking. They will speak to think, versus first third will think to speak. All of us are expressive, but we demonstrate that in a different way. We have different levels of energy for that. In the middle, we've got second third, and these folks will depend on the values, the morals, how it fits with them in terms of how their expressiveness will show out. So second third people, their default is, depending on, it depends. This is their phrase, it depends. It depends if the training's relevant to my job. Then I'll be really interested in asking loads of questions. If it's not relevant, I might let other people do more of the talking because I'm listening. So I'm flexing into the first third. So this second group, it will depend. So expressiveness, as we understand it, and everyone is our display outwardly of our emotions towards not just other people, but the world at large. So I say the world at large. So I might be slightly on third. In fact, I think I'm 95% percentile, which is gregarious to the nth degree. And that serves me as a trainer because I can bring the energy to the room, but I have to be mindful of that. Because if I'm designing up something where I think, oh, brilliant, well, I'll get them to do this, this, and this, because I think that would be fun. But I am 95 percentile. I have 25,000 words. I have all the facial gestures. I have all the movements. So we have to be mindful that different people have different ways of expressing. And just because I'm sitting, I'm concentrating and listening doesn't mean I'm not expressing, I'm not in the room.
Anna, can I ask a question, please? Actually, it's not even a question. It's my gregariousness coming out clearly because I need to speak to think. I think the left-hand sided people, the quiet and introspective, because the chat going on about you, they scare the hell out of us. We forget that sometimes silence is so important just to give people a chance to process and understand how they want to reply.
And Anella, are you a coach?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, not at all. The reason I ask is because Sheridan said there's a few coaches in the room. I'm learning, I'm doing my accreditation at the moment. And you're absolutely right. We can forget, the ones that are third, can forget that time equals space, equals time to think. Nancy Klein, awesome. that if we don't provide that time for people to think and kind of cogitate, then we aren't giving them the space to learn. We're not giving them the space to articulate the exact thing they need to articulate. So absolutely, yeah. And again, the other way around, we can forget people need to talk. They don't necessarily need to be right or even be heard, but their default is, I'm sitting on all these words, I've got to just say them. Yeah, absolutely. So the second behavior, then we'll get into the Jamboard exercise, is assertiveness. And this one, sometimes I think we conflate expressiveness and assertiveness. Assertiveness, we are all assertive, is the style and the pace. There's a speed. When you look at third assertiveness, there's a speed at which people advance their feelings, their thoughts and belief about what they want to happen. And I think culturally, we think assertiveness is that. I want this to happen. This is what I'm doing. I'm driving it forward. A great example is, you know, when you get a lift in a big office because you're not climbing the stairs because there's too many, or you're just lazy. And you stand at the lift button and you press it. How many of us in the room get to the lift and go, press the button like 10 times, yeah. That might be showing your third assertiveness. You're asserting with pace that you want the lift to come, which is very different from first third. They'll have pressed the lift button once. They don't need to do it more times. They've asserted what they want to happen.
Where do you fall in that when you get out the lift and press every button on the way out?
Oh, I can't say it. I'm in polite company. So we can see these things like regular every day, but also in the training room, we might be aware of, you know, we all have those people that will be the speakers. So that's the assertiveness. We'll have the people who are like, you know, I want to know the resource. I want to know where that is. How can I want to take this further. And they'll verbalize that. You might experience first, third assertiveness behavior with questions rather than I want. It will be questions about something rather than a demand for it. They're still asserting what they want to happen, but the style is more questioning. And the role that they take in teams and in a session is more peacekeeping, more easygoing, versus what I think we think traditionally is assertiveness and that drive, that pressing the button lots and lots of times. So final behavior, and then we'll get on to the Jamboard exercise, is flexibility. And again, all of us are flexible in terms of how we accommodate a change that is happening. And that is how we accommodate the wants and the desires and the thoughts of actions of others. So it's not necessarily how much we like to change, it's the willingness to accommodate the change from others. We're all flexible, but first, third, flexible will be focused on the decision that's been made already. You said we had 5 minutes for this exercise, and I've noticed it's 7 minutes. Why has that changed? Why have we got extra 2 minutes? Now, this person in that example isn't necessarily being obtuse. They're asking, why have we got 2 more minutes? Because it was agreed that it was 5 minutes. So what is the reason why? And sometimes that can be quite difficult. You think, oh, that's really challenging. Versus third, flexibility. They might think, oh, brilliant, this is not a problem to me. I'm just doing the thing that they've told me. Oh, shiny new object. It's quite a lot of us like that, I'm sure. So this idea of flexibility, we all have flexibility. First, third, they get energy by knowing what's going to happen. And when someone changes the parameters, they need to know why. They need to understand the reason for the change. And it doesn't mean that they can't change and flex to that. They can. But their default kind of go-to preference is, I want to know what's happening. Versus third, it doesn't matter. I'm quite happy with changes. I'm quite happy for you to say it was 5 minutes, but we're gonna flex and do a 15-minute exercise because you're enjoying it. So I want us to do as a breakout, I'm going to put you into 3 rooms, and I'm going to ask you to jump onto a Jamboard. So let's have a little look. I'll get the link here for you. I'll pop this in the chat. Can you just double check that you can access it? You should be able to. But there's the link in the chat there, and this should take you to the Jamboard that you can see on the slide. Anyone fast-fingered and opened it already? And it worked?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yep. Very good, very good. So what we should be able to see is the Jamboard, and at the top, I'd like you to navigate to the slide that corresponds to the number of the room I'm going to give you. So I'm just going to pop you into 3 rooms, and I want room 1 to use the second slide. So at the top, if you navigate to the frame that is number 2, that is room 1. That's Andanella, Fiona, Gossier, John, and Penny. You're going to be in room 1.
Anna, the Jamboard's view only. Do you want us to write on it, or just
it shouldn't be view only. Here we go. Hold on. Thank you, thank you. Oh yeah, now I want you to be able to edit it. Good save. Okay, hold please. And then
can I have the link again? I dropped
Yes.
out of the meeting for a moment, and
you can, because now it's right. So this now is an edit link. Thank you. Good save, Jennifer.
Thanks.
So the frame 2, I'd like Andanella, Fiona, Gossier, John, and Penny to work on that. And your question is the same for each frame. What activities will resonate with this behaviour spectrum? So on the spectrum, you can do all the way to third, all the way to first third. What are the types of activity that will resonate with this behaviour? And that is for expressiveness, room 1. Assertiveness, frame 3, will be room 2, and that's Emma, Gail, Jamie, Russell, and Sybil. And then room 3 will be the flexibility behaviour, and that's Caroline, Jasmine, Jennifer, Phil, and Vicky. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do this with a 30-second countdown. So, like, rough and ready. I want you to think about and talk about the types of activities that you think as designers will resonate with these behaviours. Everyone clear on that? Excellent. Okay, so I'm pressing the button, and I'll see you back in 5 minutes and 30 whole seconds. Right, here they come, coming back. Very good. Excellent.
That's amazing how quickly 5 minutes passes.
It is, isn't it? It's not enough time at all, and I know that. Let's share room 1's Jamboard. Let's have a little look at this. So, can we all see that? There we go. What have we got here then? Have we got someone who's brave enough to articulate the board?
I'm happy to start. I was the scribe, but I'm sure my group will contribute.
Excellent.
So on the left-hand side is very much reflective work, maybe course up front before the session began. Give them plenty of thinking time so they knew what to expect. And then in the session, reflection, individual work. So giving them a minute to write their thoughts down and reflect on whatever it is we're discussing. On the right-hand side is very much the activist coming to play. So doing role plays, group work, maybe larger groups, and perhaps what I'm doing, representing the group discussion. We actually spent quite a bit of time in the end in the middle bit. Would anybody else like to talk through the middle bit?
Yeah, it's Fiona here. It's that sort of starting to, it's almost like moving from the left to the right gently. So you might go from the individual reflection into maybe paired work, or working in smaller groups over a case study that then gets discussed with the whole group and maybe even enacted in some way if it's a skills thing. So you go from group thinking to actually doing. But also it could be a mobile thing where you might get them sticking stuff up on a wall or doing what we've done here, you know, in a shared way, putting ideas and seeing people build on someone's ideas. So maybe that would encourage first thirders to feel they're being heard. And then the others at the other end of the spectrum can add and build and come up with new ideas as well.
I really like that stage brainstorm. I like that staging of the different types of activities. And I'm sure you all plan this in your sessions anyway, but just understanding the reason why you do that. For some people who are like, I'll be the scribe, I'll be the presenter. That's brilliant. That's great. But while you're being a big personality in the room, what are we making sure other people are doing and taking from it? Do they have that space? Which, you know, as you described, is a really good way of doing that display and reporting and scribing work. Anything else?
There is one more thing I wanted to add for people. I didn't think of it before. On the left hand side, it's whenever I do an activity that requires an observer to then report in front of the group what they've seen. These are really good people to involve.
Yeah, really, really good. So their remit is to use the ratio of two eyes, 2 ears to 1 mouth. So really concentrate and observe and then report back. I love the peer, using peer explanation as well. Describe to the person next to you, you know, what you've learned. That can really work for third, but also that can really help, you know, pull the first thirds into that scratchy feeling of the learning. How would I articulate that to someone? How would I? What words would I choose? How would I go about doing that? But yeah, I really like the observers. Excellent. Anyone who wasn't in room 1, anything to add? No.
I think I'm just sort of probably reiterating what that group thought of. I think when living with 2 people who are on the first third and the other 2 of us are on the third, it's all about planned contributions, I think. And I know the people in my house that are less expressive, they have no problem speaking up at all as long as it's planned. What they don't like is being put on the spot.
Yeah, so there's that time element that, you know, don't throw something at me, don't throw me the hot potato. I want to know it's coming. Thank you. I don't, you know, absolutely. So we're gonna change the pace slightly because I want to get more stuff in. So let's have a look from room 2. So who is going to be your speaker? So we've got assertiveness, and we've got some nice nice post-its on here. Who's going to be the speaker? Who's going to do it?
I'll do it. As you can see, we didn't get around to doing the middle part or
right.
around that.
5 minutes is not enough time.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, we were like, whoa, time's gone so quick. So obviously, yeah, in that first third, we looked at, you know, things like those questionnaires, self-assessment. So all those 4 things, it's they're self-paced, unless you give a limit. But it's their time to reflect on things, to think about it, and then come up with, you know, whatever their thoughts are. Whereas at the other end, it's for those who want to share more thoughts, feelings, ideas, ask questions, group discussions, role play, action learning sets, which is obviously all about asking questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's as far as we got.
Actually, the action learning sets would be great for first third as well, that being able to assert by asking questions. So we think assertive behavior is, I want this to happen. But actually on the spectrum of assertiveness, that first third shows up by asking questions, checking for, you know, canvassing for opinion, not because they're wanting to be led by someone else, because they want to know what other people think in order for them to be able to negotiate and assert what they want to happen. So it might be the learning sets would work really well for the first thirds as well.
Yeah,
okay, excellent. Thank you, Russell. And then finally, we've got, you see, this is excellent. This is you had less people, and 5 minutes was obviously not enough for room 3. So flexibility. Who wants to give us a rundown of maybe the things that you didn't put down on this? Go on. I'm going to call you out now. One of you will have to talk to me, whether it's Phil, Jennifer, Jasmine, or Caroline. Someone has to say something to us.
I don't mind. Just we didn't really, as you can see, we didn't really get around to much. I think we're all somewhere in the middle, and we were just trying to be accommodating of everyone. So we were kind of thinking, well, if we give our learners a workbook, for example, and then we change what we're doing, if we actually call that out at the start and say, look, we're going to deliberately, we're going to skip things because we want to cover the material that's important to you, and we call that out at the start, then that's kind of appealing to everyone. So we just wanted to appeal to everyone.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. The use of workbooks is great, because you're saying this is the information that's set, fixed and focused on your learning. In the session, we're going to be putting some of that, but this is the thing that you go to, which is the actual information we wanted to cover. And again, that calling out is, this is what's happening. We are not going to be following that exactly. So again, that could energize the thirds. Oh, brilliant, we don't know what's going to happen. And that could kind of reaffirm there is a set objective for this session, because it's written down in a workbook. So again, doing the same thing, but maybe framing it in a slightly different way would suit both ends of the flexibility behaviour there.
Anna,
Excellent.
I'm just jumping in. One of the things I always recommend when people are designing training is, particularly for the core activities, to have an alternative. So I'm wondering, would that fit? And that might, I feel I'm in the middle of flexibility, but would that fit into that? Say that we will be doing an activity to explore X. It may be this, or this. But we will be doing one, so there's that certainty. But what it's going to look like, we can play with that a little bit.
I think maybe thirds will be totally up for that, and first thirds might think there's a few criteria there and I don't really know which one, so that might be a little bit scratchy for me, because I don't actually know which one you're going to give me. So again, pre-course information.
So you can choose which one you do. That would perhaps feel
yeah, absolutely. Mindful of time, so I'm going to show you some slides. Oh, we're recording. Good. I'd forgotten to say. So I
remembered.
Very good. So I've got a slide here just with the kind of tips for us when we're interacting. So not at the planning and designing stage, but when we're actually in the room, how can we accommodate the different ends of the spectrum of expressive, assertive and flexibility? So that idea that you gave us there, Sheridan, suggesting fewer changes would speak to first third. Allowing for loads of change and revision is great. So having a workbook, and therefore that is the I use plan, that's my word, that's the plan of the session, and so any changes are going to be around what that information is telling us, rather than it could be anything. So that would, I think, speak to them. This is how each of the behaviors like to listen, and there was lots of role-playing, group and learning sets, activities for expressiveness, because third folks who are expressive find it hard to be quiet. And I, for one, have to sit on my hands when I'm in a class. When I'm a participant, I physically sit on my hands, and that's a physical reminder to me, wait, this is the acronym I've learned recently, it's great, wait. Why am I talking? Love it. So I have to really practice that, because my default is, I've got loads of questions.
And I think this is why a lot of our members who are trainers are so courteous when they are participants. I think that's why they mute themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's a conscious thing, isn't it? I'm going to speak, I have to unmute.
Yeah. And again, that's back to, doesn't mean you can't act out of preference. It just means it's taking me energy. You might not see that it's taking me energy, but it's taking me energy to not be talking all the time, not be moving around. And yes, Gossius, yeah, totally agreeing. And so I've just included a few bits in the slides about how people like to listen. Really quickly, because I'm mindful of time, I wanted to go through the thinking attributes. And this, again, I use, and there's another Jamboard, and we'll have another 5 minutes very quickly to see how we can come up with sessions that speak to our different 4 thinking attributes. Now, in emergenetics, we're emerging from our blueprint of genetics and our life experiences, because our life experiences feed our brain and vice versa. It's not nature or nurture, it is both. So how we understand the world can be divvied up into 4. This is very similar to insights. You can use the insights tool for this structure as well. We have blue, analytical thinkers, clear, logical data. They love a bit of research. They're rational. They love to do mental analysis. I do not have this in great amounts. So when I'm trying to fill information, I have to think dates, times, numbers, stats. It's not my go-to. So having a structure that is literally a quad of a piece of paper, I'm trying to tell this story. Where's the stats? Where's the hook of the information for the analytical thinkers in the room that want to know? So that logical kind of clear thinking. Underneath that, we've got structural. Structural is practical. They like guidelines. Anyone here loves to write a list? Absolutely. That could be our structural thinking as a preference coming in. We like beginnings and ends. We like closure. We like to give directions and receive directions. If you want something in an email from me, tell me what, give me the bullet points, tell me when. Love it. The question that analytical folks, analytical folks ask is what? The question that structural people ask is when. These two thinking, analytical and structural thinking, are convergent ways of thinking. They like to converge onto the right answer. I think that's really useful in terms of how we understand how people work. They want to know what the right answer is. Sometimes there isn't one. And this is the folks on the other side. We don't just have one preference. We can have 1, 2, 3, or 4. And we will go to each of these different ways of thinking. We've got social, which I like to reframe as relational, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you like people. It just means that you tend to be relational, intuitive about people. You'll talk through a story rather than a data point. You enjoy helping others, and you tend to be emotionally in tune with others. So this social way of understanding the world, their question or our question is who? Who does this affect? Who am I talking to? Who's interested? And then finally, we've got conceptual. They ask, what if? Wouldn't it be amazing if we did this? Because they're imaginative, creative, visionary, enjoy doing stuff that hasn't been written down and is not a list, that hasn't been done before. They like to think outside of the box. And these two types of thinking, the social and the conceptual, are divergent ways of thinking. We start with one story or idea, and then we branch off and we create many more answers to the question. In a work environment and in a training session, you can see when divergence means convergence. What's the right answer? There is no right answer. That can be really interesting as a trainer to try and provide the information for these different ways of thinking. Then at the top and bottom, very quickly, abstract, strategic, 25,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. We're looking down in an abstract numbers ideas. Concrete, structural and social. Who does it affect? When does it affect? We're on the ground. We're working with the people. So what we should be alive to is working out, are we speaking to these different thematic ways of thinking? And again, we might have one way that's our preference. It doesn't mean we're good at it. It means we go to it first. In that time element piece that we did at the beginning, if you give me 2 seconds, I've written a list and I'm saying who's going to do it. My preferences are structural and social. So when someone says, what was the date of? I think, oh, I have no idea. I don't keep that in my head. So I have to go and find it. Or if someone says, Anna, think up a creative, I think, oh God, no, I can't. I'm not creative. I am, but it takes more energy for me to do that. So really, really quickly, we're going to jump into another Jamboard, and I'm going to ask you how each of our learning styles and ways of thinking, how do they want to learn, let's say. Let me stop doing this and very quickly do the Jamboard, because I'm going to have to change the link, aren't I? Because I didn't do the share edit, I did the share view. So let me quickly do that. Done, bish, bash, bosh. I'm going to share that with you, and I'm going to put you back into the breakout rooms, and it is literally going to be for 5 minutes. Click on that link and you should get the link that looks like this. Nope. And then I'm going to pop you back into the same breakout session. It's not a problem, Sybil. And I'm going to pop you into a 5 minutes again. And your question is, how does each attribute, analytical, structural, social, and conceptual, how do they prefer to learn? How can you hook them into some content? What are the default ways that you can kind of, what's the low-hanging fruit? How can you hook them in based on their thinking attributes, their preferences? So 5 minutes, 15 seconds countdown in the same groups again. Room 1, you are, actually no, there's only 3. Do you know what? You can choose where you want to go. I'm going to let you choose where you're going to go, but you have to agree in your groups. So for those of you who are first, third flexible, ha, 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 does that feel scratchy? And third flexible, you can go anywhere you want as long as you agree. So room 1, 2, and 3, you can choose which of the frames you want to work on, just agree, and then write down one thing, and then we'll come back to finish off the session.
Anna, is there any way of seeing the slide that had all the descriptors on?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I've got it as a reveal. So wait a minute, let me see. I'll write, you won't get the chat, will you? Which one do you want to do? And I'll leave it, I'll leave it up there.
I don't know, I've got to watch my group.
If you can show it, we can screenshot it. If you can show it on the
So
in the main room.
you'll have to do 4 because it's a reveal. Sorry, Gail.
All right, hang on.
I haven't got the static. So take 1 and then I'll do it, pull it round to the structural.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Oh, she's fast. Social.
Yep. Got it.
Conceptual.
Always amazing when Gail joins a session.
Right,
you're very kind.
Deals with everything.
What's the red one? Can you do the red one again, please?
Yeah, social. So write one thing down, and you've got 5 minutes, and then we'll pull you back, and then we'll very quickly sum up, and then Sheridan will take back over.
So maybe put one thing in each quadrant. Would that be a
One
good
thing,
idea? Yeah, everybody put one thing in each quadrant.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go see you the other side. So excellent. The record button is hit. Oh, there's some happy smiley faces. That's always good. That either means you had a good time or you're so frustrated with my lax time management and I am the butt of the joke. So I can see that you did manage to get something down for the different slides. So we'll just really quickly have a look at those. While we do, does anybody want to share? Has someone thought, oh, this is so me, like this is what I want to know, this is where I think it's the default for me?
Certainly for me, one of the things for me, and I got it from format, and it's similarly in this, is if I don't understand why, then you're not really going to get me to do the what.
Yes.
You know, I won't go and do stuff just because, or I won't, you know, with maths, for example, teachers at a certain point had no time to explain why we would want to do something. They just told me what you needed to do. And I went from an A to an E. And that was literally, looking back with, you know, the benefit of hindsight, was that's because I didn't understand why on earth I would want to do differentiation apart from torturing school children. So yeah.
That could be some concrete thinking about how can I actually do it in real life? When is it going to be, you know, relevant and useful to me? That's brilliant. So we really are out of time because Sheridan wants to speak to you all, but I'll leave the Jamboards up so you can flick through them and we can see case studies, information, data. We've got workbooks. Again, we love those so we can follow a structure. Breakout rooms. How did that make you feel? That's a great social thinking one. Oh, wow. Conceptual. Sheridan said, I think there's lots of conceptual folk in this session, and I think that maybe you're right. So I'll leave those up so you can have a little look at them. I'm going to share with you really, really quickly there's a discount code. If you're interested, there's a discount code for emogenetics, and there's a communicating effectively kind of worksheet that you can steal. Again, you can use any other tool, but just kind of making you think about, how do people behave? How do people think? How can I really hook into those default preferences? And then what am I going to get them to feel scratchy about? Where is that learning happening? So if you are, I've got some slides that I'll share with you. If you are interested in the profiles, they are a bit more expensive than the insights and the other ones, but I've got a discount up on there if you would like to have one. Get in touch with me, and then you've got 3 whole minutes now, Sheridan.
I feel bad that I'm rushing you now, Anna, but I just...
No, it's my time management. Don't worry about it.
Because I thought people would rather listen to you than listen to me, to be totally honest.
Well, let's have a look if there's anything in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Literally, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you what's happening next time. And that's really going to be it. So go to you.
I don't have a question. I have a quick ADHD hack for everyone to apply what we've learned today. What I always ask myself to do, mindful of that, of the fact that not everyone has the same learning preferences I do. When I do my mind map for the session, I look at my mind map at all the activities I planned, and I ask myself the question, what are the people doing in this moment? And I make sure that these things, and I wrote them down because I forget, like thinking, reflecting, I forget those things because I'm all about doing and discussing. So I make sure that these things, or most of those things, are included, and I color code it, and I make sure that I have a rainbow on my mind map to include everyone.
I'm a fan of that. I'm an absolute fan of that. That's great. So that you've got the diversity of all the things that would be outside of your preference. You say, you know, you're probably a bit more concrete in terms of the structure and the people. But if we don't pay attention and make space in our own minds about planning for people who are not like us, we will just not do it. And our role as designers is to make sure we've thought about the different ways that people think. Yeah, that's
Anna,
awesome.
could I ask a very quick question? Fiona
Of course
here.
Fiona.
What was the question? You know, you had what's the question of the analyticals when is it why for the conceptuals? Because I didn't hear it.
So conceptuals, not necessarily why, but it's what if? What if we did? It's that imaginative, out of the box kind of, you know, I don't really need a remit. I'll just go and find out. I'll find out loads of stuff. Yeah. So I live with someone who is conceptual. Her mode of thinking is conceptual. It's great because that's not where I sit. So yeah, ideas and wacky experiential stuff comes from that yellow portion. That speaks to you, Garcia.
But one of our members isn't here today, but I know that that's lovely, except when it's a client trying to give you a brief and they're all, woo, what you could do. It's like, no, just tell me what you need me to do.
What you tend to see is if you're diagonally opposite, then you'll feel a bit more scratchy. So if you have a structural thinking preference and you're hanging out with someone who's conceptual, it can be frustrating because they aren't answering the bullet points. There is no bullet points. And the conceptual folk think, why are you taking the fun out of it? I'm not planning anything to do. I'm just talking about the brilliant, exciting ideas. So we need to be mindful of those diagonals as well.
Sorry, Anna. So I've just updated the Jamboard. So social is asks who, conceptual asks what if, structure asks when, analytical asks what?
What? So I guess speaking to Penny's kind of the hook, no, that's a bad example. Penny, you were saying, what's the reason? What's the application? What's the reason that I'm learning this? Long division or whatever it was.
So analytical asks why.
Analytical actually asks the what. What is the data? What do we know? What do we know to be true? They're looking for evidence. Yeah. And sometimes that can be feel challenging when someone says, well, how do we know that that's true? Well, they're asking the question because they want to know the answer, not because they want to be objectionable. They want to know the answer.
I remember the first time I worked with a group of lawyers, and I found them very challenging because they were asking a lot of questions like that. And it wasn't because they were trying to catch me out. I realised, I thought, no, they're not trying to catch me out. They want to know.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll ping the, well, you've got the resources up on the website, or you will have, and the slides will be in PDF form. Please get in touch with me if you've got any questions about the session today. I'm more than happy to have a chat with you. It's been great. Thank you so much. I've really gone over time. I only apologise.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna. I think we could definitely have made that a sort of a 3-hour session, couldn't we? Easy as anything.
We could have had a little workshop in person.
We could, and literally, I'm just going to finish off for those of you who are not VIPs. Become a VIP, and we can continue this conversation. You can chat about it in the discussion groups. Do connect with Anna. You've seen how lovely she is and how helpful she is. Connect with her on LinkedIn if you haven't connected with her already, and maybe see about taking her on her offer. Our next session is not going to be a lunch and learn with a speaker. We are going to be using our Transform deck, because at the Design Festival in January, everyone said how amazing that session was and how we wanted to do more of it. So we will be doing that on the 31st of March. So if you have a Transform deck, get it to hand. If you haven't got one, don't worry. We can manage without, because hey, Anna's got a Transform deck right there, look. So that is something that we will be doing. So it's going to be a guided session. I'm not Terry, so sorry, I'm very much second division here, but I will do my best. And it's going to be a session in 2 halves. So there's going to be the first half, we're going to be doing something specific, and the second half we're going to be using the Transform deck on your own challenges. So I think visit the website to, if you're not a member, get yourself booked on that, or to find out more. And with that, I will say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolutely fascinating session, and I wish we'd had 3 hours.
Sheridan, on the 31st, what time is that?
I'm going to do it 1 till 2:30, probably, if that suits everybody.